You know, when you say INEC is ready, this INEC ready thing has been on for a while. And he said something there yesterday about 1 million permanent voters cards have not been printed. About over 1 million who have also been stolen and they cannot be replaced. Based on what he said, it's too late to do that. About over 500,000 that were brought in did not work. He said that as well. So when you look at all of that, go back to the Constitution where he said nobody should be disenfranchised who is of votable age. How would INEC still say they're ready?
You see, unfortunately, I would rather, that section, I think it's section 78 or thereabout, that talks about any one of 18. The minimum age is actually 18. You cannot be deprived of the right to vote. Now, how many people actually vote? We can't use the gaps, so to speak, in the Electoral Act or the Constitution to further delay holding the election. There are a number of people. As I sit here, I can say this to you that you'll be amazed of the number of people who don't have the PVCs but are not willing to vote and will not participate in the election. So we can't, on the basis of that, now simply say that, oh, because certain number of people have been disturbed. What is the proportion of the number that don't have the PVC? Are they also willing to vote?
But we can't justify that because there's no statistics to prove that.
That's part of the problem.
There's just a blanket statement that, well, if people are not willing to come out, what do I do? But we get barrage of emails, tweets, comments saying, look, I've been to my ward several times and I can't get my PVC.
What I believe will happen is this. Despite the imperfection in the system, the election has to hold. What is the number of Nigerians that have the PVC? I know I have, and I know a few people that already have. Let's go to the polls. We cannot continue to shift the polls date because a number of people do not have it yet.
Mr. Quakers, again, you see the issues, the legal side of it all. The court case is already glaring you in the face before the election hold, because, I mean, these are loopholes for people to want to go to court. I mean, some political parties could just get up and, after the elections, if it doesn't favor them, say, this election cannot be said to be properly conducted because this amount of people did not have their permanent voters cards. And that portion of the Constitution says you should not stop them from voting when they are of votable age. That's one side. The other side of it is the portion that has to do with the card reader. I mean, the Electoral Act says something about can use electronic devices in voting.
Yeah.
And Professor Jega was quoted yesterday as saying that voting is an act of taking a ballot paper and putting it in a ballot box. So
no, he's 100% correct. Let me be honest with you.
But can you vote without accreditation?
No, you can't. You can't vote without accreditation. But you can't.
Now, in this case, accreditation is being done via an electronic device.
Yes.
And if I cannot vote without accreditation, then that means I can't vote at all. So how does that work out? No,
let me see. A lot of people are misconstruing that section of the Electoral Act. If my memory is not failing me, I think it's section 56.
Yeah, there's 49.
52. No, 52 sub 1B. If I'm not mistaken, 52 sub 1B.
So it says the use of electronic voting machine for the time being is prohibited.
Exactly. Electronic voting machine is different from an electronic card reader. In other words, e-voting is not recognized. They're two different things. You can't have electronic voting as they have in other developed societies. What you do here is the process of verification by the presiding officer at the polling booth. When you get there and you go with your PVC, the machine will authenticate it, which is similar to what we were doing before. So rather than do it manually, we're now doing it electronically. But you're not casting your vote electronically.
No, but some of that say, they ask, is voting an act or a process?
Voting is a process.
And then they say, look, if it's a process, and then the part that he mentioned, even though the chairman says, there's no law that says you cannot use an electronic device.
Definitely. It's correct. It's 100% correct. I can't fault him on that. You see, let me be honest with you. I commend Professor Ataru Jega's courage, despite the challenges, despite the insinuations. Imagine a situation where the ruling political party has accused him of bias, that he tends to favor the opposition, and he's held himself high. What he has done now, it's never been this in this country where the chairman of the electoral body comes on air and says that the reason why some people are resisting the introduction of a device to determine authenticity of voters' card is because it will address the issue of rigging.
Yeah, but there are some others who also say they have genuine fears about it, about what's that word? Configuring it to your polling unit, how long it takes.
Why can't we just simply allow it to work first? Why don't we just simply? He said recently that in trying it out, they discovered that a number of cloned PVCs were to be used in trying it out. So why don't we just simply allow the system to run?
But the thing about that is, before I go to this ballot question, the GSM technology,
Yes.
which this device is predicated on,
Yes.
we know the challenge we have with
Yes.
that device, wherein you could send someone a text message and it doesn't arrive until weeks, sometimes 5, 4, 7 days. So those teething challenges, do we leave them as the error margin and then move ahead?
I think so. But look, you get to the polling center, you bring out your card. Initially, it was being done manually. The polling officer, right, will look at the sheet before him to determine whether you're a registered voter or not. Now, in order to avoid and address the issue of rigging, you make your PVC available. It is put on the card simply to authenticate whether indeed it was issued to you by INEC. It might not be necessary, it might not be foolproof, but at least let it work.
You know, it's very interesting how this conversations have been framed and how, you know, it would seem that political parties are on either divide and
Yes.
every conversation becomes political.
Yes.
But what exactly is your fear? I mean, we also listened to Professor Jagai yesterday talking about how and it was on the front pages of the papers, I cannot guarantee, only the security agencies can say if it will hold in 6 weeks that it's been shifted to. Are you afraid of that statement?
Yes, I am. But let me go a step further. There's a decided case by the Court of Appeal, MD Yusuf and Obasanjo, on the use of the military for elections. And recently, the Court of Appeal, in respect of the Ekiti election matter, further confirmed the decision of the Court of Appeal in that matter that you cannot use the military. So, in other words, Jaga's position, INEC as a body has the responsibility to organize elections. There's no doubt about that. But in organizing election, it must be organized in an atmosphere of peace, tranquility, and security. Now, whose responsibility is it to do that? The court went further in saying it is the responsibility of the Nigerian police to ensure that the nascent democracy which we have is preserved and protected. The deployment, the engagement of the military in our body politic, in relation to politics, in relation to election, is unconstitutional.
No, but the army, have they ever been at
Yes.
the polling center?
Yes, certainly.
No, but what we're told is they stand.
No. They are always
distance and
involved. They
not-
are around. Recently, there was a video coverage of an event that occurred in one of the states where the soldiers physically assaulted an electorate. Recently on TV.
Okay, so that judgment says they shouldn't even be seen
Yes, they should not
anywhere
even be
at all.
anywhere at all.
But the policemen who are supposed to be there are unarmed.
No, when they have special duties, they kit them.
No, but all the policemen who are usually
because you see-
at the polling center.
No, the ones
Are
at the
unarmed.
polling center are unarmed. But you need to also have a number of policemen to cordon, because sometimes you get there, you find armed policemen, you find unarmed policemen. The ones that sit with the polling officers are usually unarmed.
Well, what we find also is that on election day, you also have that other security agencies that are involved. The security agencies that traditionally do not really perform their functions even within the country, say customs, well, NSCDC, they do theirs within the country, immigration and what have you, also trying to boost the number of security personnel on the ground. Could we ever say, as a device to boost the number of security personnel on the ground, we involve soldiers?
No, it's wrong. It's wrong. We must follow
They are
the
special
provisions
breed,
of the
or-
Constitution. And what it simply says is the police. It is their responsibility. But again, it goes further. I think is that same section of the Electoral Act, that where you now decide to get the police involved, I think it's the Constitution, section 111 217 of the Constitution, that where you now decide to involve the military, for instance, it is the president's prerogative as the commander-in-chief. He's the only person that has the constitutional power to deploy the soldiers to be involved in the electoral process. But ordinarily, the issue of security in relation to election can only be handled by the Nigerian police.
Let me bring this one in before I move to the next one because of our time. We also, maybe tell us now if that is correct. The law also says that in terms of policing the country, civil cases, criminal cases, it's the police. But we also see them having this joint task force. Different state governments commission them, they give them the car. You have the police, the army, the navy. No, not navy sometimes, but I think police.
No, navy
sometimes
yes,
as well.
Yes,
they all have that team.
Squad, yes.
Does the law recognize that?
No, you see, what the law provides for, and that is where I explained it. Under that section 217, the president and commander-in-chief of the armed forces can request for additional security using the police, or using the army, using the military.
Not for elections now.
No,
regular
generally,
cases.
on security issues. Because he is the only person that is competent or constitutionally empowered to exercise that power as commander-in-chief. No other person has the power.
Let me see if I can get this in before I wrap up. Section 49 of the Electoral Act, talking about the issue of ballot papers.
Yes.
They also raised it yesterday with the chairman. And then it says, any person intending to vote with his voter's card shall present himself to a presiding officer at the polling unit in the constituency in which his name is registered with his voter cards.
Yes.
The presiding officer, that's 2 now, shall, on being satisfied that the name of the person is on the register of voters, issue him a ballot paper and indicate on the register that the person has voted. And then they did ask him to that this doesn't factor in the permanent voter cards.
You see, that's where the issue of interpretation comes in. It is incumbent on the electoral officer to verify the identity of the person who has come to the polling unit to vote. And the process of verification is also the use of the card reader. I don't think that we should blow this out of proportion. What is the essence of the card reader? What is the essence of what are the parameters for verification? How do you determine a registered voter? How do you determine whether the person who is coming to vote is actually eligible to vote? Is registered to vote. So the essence of that is to look at the register and then to also test and verify that the voter's card, the PVC that the person has, is indeed authentic. And once he's satisfied, because the law says that once he's satisfied that the person is a registered voter, the process of determining the registered voter is incumbent on the polling officer. He has to determine it. And so if he has a device to determine whether this person indeed is a registered voter. How do you determine a registered voter? It's not when you look at the PVC against the registration and also confirm the authenticity of the PVC, and then you give the person a polling card to go and vote.
All right, that's where we'll have to let it go today. Thank you very much indeed for coming on today.
My pleasure.
Mr. Norris Quakers is a senior advocate of Nigeria, and that's where we also draw the curtains today on the program. We thank you all for watching. We'll be back tomorrow. I'm Chamberlain Oso.
Well, I hope we're not giving the director a frustrating time.
No, he's having a swell time. I can
Good
feel it.
Well, thank you so much for watching. I'm Maukbe Ogun.
I'm Neotech. We have a great day.